in this subject is because for survival reasons, if you had to depend on only what you could grow yourself, and there were no hospitals, you couldn't get any medications, for whatever reason, things had come to a standstill. Maybe it was just a power outage, weather-related situation, but maybe it would last a long time, and maybe it would be permanent. What could you do yourself that you don't have to rely on systems like that? So in that situation, to prepare ahead of time, which a lot of people feel that we should be doing, I'm not the only one who feels this way, one of the most important trees you could have in your property and on your yard, which would be really helpful, and I'm going to tell you why. These are all the extreme situations that you would need first aid for. Okay, the first one that I like the best is the ginkgo tree. And the reason why is because ginkgo is something that has survived whatever killed the dinosaurs. It's been around that long. It can live 4,000 years. It's resistant to all kinds of pests, bacteria, viruses. It survives Chernobyl, when Chernobyl went off, and all radiation. It was the only thing that came back. When Hiroshima was bombed, again, everything was annihilated. It was the only thing that sprouted back to life. And as I said, it survived the dinosaur extinction. So if you eat ginkgo, you will gain some of those properties. When you eat the plants, you take on their properties. That's how herbs work. And for humans, it's a age reverser. It reverses degeneration in the body. Everybody knows it for the memory herb for going into the head, because it's one of the two that can pass the blood-brain barrier, where our brains have a natural barrier that won't allow things up into the head area. Ginkgo is one of the two that can actually get up into the head area. And that's why it helps with memory, because the reason memory and eyesight and hearing loss starts occurs is because there's not enough blood going up into the brain, which starts to lessen at the age of 25. The blood vessel going up into the head area starts to thicken. And so ginkgo helps get that blood back up there, and blood is what carries all the nutrients to an area and removes toxins out. So if you're not getting new fresh blood and new fresh nutrients, those areas are going to start to wither and die. And same, it's not just the head though, it's every area of your body. Ginkgo is awesome for circulatory issues. And even, anything like impotence is even a thing that ginkgo cures. Bad circulation in the legs. It can get to the skin area if you're a smoker. That's the problems with smoking, is that the blood starts retracting from getting to the skin surface, so the skin starts to get leathery and thicken because there's just no blood getting there, but ginkgo gets right back up to the surface. It's resistant to drought, floods, and fire as well, the ginkgo tree. And it grows into this humongous tree that it's called the tree of life. So that's a really powerful one to have. If we ever did have a radioactive fallout, it would clear radiation in the bloodstream. And like for chemotherapy, it helps get chemotherapy out of the bloodstream. It's a blood thinner too, way better than Coumadin or any of the medical drugs, which aren't selective. They just thin everything. So the body will just continuously bleed, and not just the areas that needs it. Whereas ginkgo is a thinking herb. It will only go to the areas that need the blood to be thinned. It won't affect all the blood vessels, only those that need it. So
if you have a tree, what do you eat?
You would eat the leaves.
Just the
make
leaves.
teas out of the leaves. That's how they discovered some of the properties. It was a Chinese person back in like 4,000 years ago. He had a tree, and some of the leaves fell into this cup of hot water that he had sitting on his windowsill, and it ended up steeping those leaves, and he ended up drinking it and discovering he had better clarity in the mind, and it will, if you are taking drugs that are making your mind cloudy, it will clear those as well. Ginkgo. So
Do you need to dry the leaves, so you could use?
you can do it fresh. Storing anything, you would want to dry it, but you can definitely use things fresh, and we're going to talk about that.
Susan, if you were taking some kind of a blood thinner, would you want to check?
You would not want to choose an herb and a drug.
Right.
You'd want to make
you'd want to make a choice.
What about if you don't have a tree? What about taking it in pill form?
Well, just so you all know, I'm a master herbalist also, and I I do make tinctures, which are the most concentrated way to take herbs. First is a capsule or a tablet or a tea. Capsules and tablets are the least effective way. Teas are the second most effective way, but tinctures are the most powerful, concentrated way to take any herbs. And people who think herbs don't work, it's just because they don't take them properly. They're not taking nearly enough, so they're not noticing, what they need to do. All right, so my second favorite herb for first aid would be cayenne pepper. And cayenne pepper has the ability to, if you were having a heart attack or stroke or hemorrhaging, anything to do with the bloodstream again, it would stop that within 10 seconds. You would take a teaspoon, if you only had the powder available, into a cup of hot water and drink that, and within 10 seconds your heart attack or bleeding, nosebleed, hemorrhaging, whatever, would stop. And I have experienced that firsthand with my son, who did fall one time, and he did get this goose egg on his head, and he was going unconscious, and he was clearly, hemorrhaging. And the medical world will tell you to go down to the emergency room and get an X-ray. And I chose to test out the cayenne instead, and he was, I actually tried ice first, but I didn't realize really, because it was my first experience, that I shouldn't have let him lay down, but I did for like an hour, and he was like, his eyes were rolling in the back of his head, and he had, his speech was all slurry, and he was like losing it fast. And so I said, okay, I got to do this. And I had it in a liquid form, fortunately, because this is the best way to take it. And I squirted some in his mouth, and immediately his speech came back really rapid. Ow, that burns, that's hot. He was 5 at the time. And so I was like, wow, and so he immediately popped up too. He had been like slumped on the ground like a puppet without strings, and so he started to walk, but his legs were still buckling. And he had an egg. I had witnesses. Somebody had pushed him, and he had landed on a tile floor. So I said, I got to give you one more squirt, because we had to be somewhere in 5 minutes. He had to be at a class he was taking where he runs around, things like that. So I gave him another squirt of this in his mouth, pure cayenne tincture, and so then he got his walking capabilities back, and we went to the class, and I said, are you sure you're all right? It was just instant, and he was really losing consciousness, and he said, yeah, come on, let's go. Everything was back to normal, but, so I waited at the class. I said, let me just make sure, because he was going to be running around, and they tell you don't run around, like for a week at least, in the hospital route. They tell you, get the x-ray, don't let the child sleep, even through the night, because, he might bleed to death or whatever. And so, they said, just go home, we'll tell you if anything happens that you need to come back for. So I left him at the class. He ran around the playground immediately after this, and came home, and everybody said he's going to be half purple and half green the next day, who had witnessed this fall, because I had someone visiting me and had seen him. So I said, well, I'm not going to worry about keeping him awake all night. So I said, let me just give you one more squirt, and I just gave him a banana to follow it, because it really burns. And I gave him the squirt, and he went to bed, and the next day, I didn't even check on him all night, and, he slept through fine. It was completely gone. There was no purple, green, no bruising, nothing. And I took pictures of it, because so cayenne, in other words, will get the blood to absorb back into the body, and you should always carry it. I carry it in my purse all the time, and he's had other areas where if you were bleeding, like gushing blood, like you ripped open your leg, or, like I said, nosebleed. You can also apply the cayenne on the outside externally, and it won't burn like you think, and it will also stop the bleeding on an external basis. Comfrey is also really good for stopping bleeding, and that's another one we'll be talking about. But cayenne is as effective as morphine in reducing pain, they say, because it produces endorphins in the body, and the body sends out painkillers because it's just so hot and painful. So they say it's effective as morphine if you took the right amount. It's really high in vitamin C and calcium too. But that's a really important one. Instead of carrying around, what's that one they give you for heart attacks?
Nitro?
Yeah. You could just carry this cayenne around, and just strokes or anything, it would. And paralysis, someone who's been in a wheelchair their whole life, it says cayenne alone will make that person walk again. Which I haven't been able to test, but if you know anyone,
When you say carry it around with you, do you just carry the
Well,
driver?
the tincture you can't carry around because it will be destroyed in the heat. Not in the heat, it will last 100 years, but So I have to carry it in powder form.
Okay, and then at that time when you do give it to somebody, you're gonna
So you
mix.
take a teaspoon of the powder and mix it in water. But the problem with that, like if
You
they were
know,
having a heart attack, they're gonna have to drink this cup when they're probably like unconscious. Whereas the squirt, like with the eyedropper, you can just shove it in their mouth.
Okay, so you would mix it with you mix it with the water and then put it and use a dropper or a little syringe or something to get it into their mouth. Is what you're saying.
Well, in the cup of water situation, I would try to get them to just drink
If you
it.
can, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It's more handy to just have this tincture, and I do sell it a 2-ounce emergency size for $6. So, you know, if you want that, which you should. And I know people who have had that, and they've had situations already they've had to use it in, and they've said it saved. Somebody was having a heart attack, and she's like, "Well, we got the cayenne." You know, it was like one of the few people who had done that, bought it, and they used it, and they think it saved this person's life.
Well, could you carry like the tincture in your purse, or would it
Only if it's not going to be in the car in the heat.
So the person
has
has
to-
to have a heart attack you're
You could do that until, you know, you'll know if it's like how you keep water in the car, you know, in a bottle, if it goes bad, like, so,
How long would the tincture last if it's kept in the right temperature?
100 years.
Oh, okay, but it was just a plain powder. Okay, so the tincture will keep. Okay.
Oh yeah, because it's in an alcohol base, so it acts as a preservative.
Okay.
That's what actually draws out the most medicinal properties.
So, somebody told me you can put the cayenne directly on a cut. Or,
Yeah, that's what I was just
Oh,
saying, if you were bleeding or something,
Yeah.
yeah,
The powder?
yeah, the powder.
You said vitamin C, right?
Yeah, it's very high in vitamin C.
Absorbic or tannins or these
What was that?
absorbic C
Oh,
or
ascorbic.
tannins?
I don't think it's tannin, I would say it's ascorbic. And it's high in calcium too. Okay, so that's number 2. And also, if you had a stomach ulcer, if you took a teaspoon of cayenne in a glass of water 3 times a day, it would be cured in like 24 hours. Because it's so painful, the body would immediately try to create a new lining in the stomach. So if you can get through that, you'll be cured. No, but it has. You know, instead
Not one
of
of those cure you or kill you kind of things.
the body won't cure itself to death. Okay, so, and that's, you know, everybody knows what that looks like, right? It's that hot little red pepper. Kind of looks like, I think I have it here. All right, so my third favorite emergency herb, so that's a great first aid herb, but, you know, to grow it and have it live in your garden, you know, it's much better to already have it in the powder or the tincture form, but if, you know, you didn't have those availabilities, then at least have it in your garden and drink that juice, you know, put that juice in that cup of water, you know, the seeds, they'd be hot. All right, so comfrey. Has anybody here heard of comfrey? How many people have heard of comfrey? Comfrey is really important for, the name actually, comfrey itself means, I just want to get this right. Comes from the Latin word confirma, which means firming or uniting of bones. Comfrey, also, they say, if you were to put some comfrey in a cup with broken bones, the bones would come back together. That's like, no, but seriously, it does that in the body. It's kind of like how a lizard grows its tail back, or, you know, animals regenerate body parts. Comfrey is the one that would allow humans to regenerate body parts, including brand new spines, you know, anything bone related. And also for Parkinson's disease and multiple sclerosis and things like that, which are usually a calcium deficiency, it's a lot of labor to do this, but if you wore the comfrey on your head and had it get absorbed through your scalp, you do this, you know, several nights in a row with a shower cap, and like I said, it's kind of messy and complicated, but just putting that through your head and then wrapping it all the way down your spine has regenerated spines that have been like really degenerated. So comfrey would be an important emergency herb because if you had broken bones, one of the first things that happens and we've had this, I've broken my toe and my son has had a green stick fracture on his arm, and without ever taking an aspirin at all, that's the first thing that leaves is the pain. Because once the body stops hearing, you know, it's screaming for assistance. When you're in pain, that's the body's way of saying, help me, do something, I need something. So as soon as you start giving it what it needs, that stops immediately. It's like, okay, you know, I'm happy now, and the pain goes away. That's the first thing that leaves. There was a story of a little boy, he was about 10 years old, and he was sitting under a big heavy engine, farm engine or something, and he was playing underneath it, and the thing slipped and landed on his whole pelvic area and just shattered his whole, all the bones into little jigsaw pieces. And at the time, they did know this famous herbalist, and that's what he did, is he made this tea of comfrey, and they soaked flannel cotton with it and just left it on that area, because your body, you know, the skin is the largest organ in the body. Anything you put on your skin will get absorbed like a food. And without sutures or stitches or pins or anything, all those bones came back together all by themselves, because the body does have a DNA blueprint of what it's supposed to be like how I said lizards grow back tails. And comfrey has that ability to do that. The tap roots actually go down in the soil 30 to 35 feet deep. So when we're going to take a walk out there, and there's a possibility there might be some, but otherwise it's kind of, it can take over. You have to really pen it in by putting something deep into the ground, because it spreads like rhizomes underneath the ground, and it will just keep spreading and keep spreading. And they say once you plant it, it's kind of hard to get rid of it. So you would have to pen it in an area, but it makes a really good fertilizer too. If you take the comfrey leaves and soak them in water, you can make a great fertilizer for plants, and it just, you know, is very proliferate. It's called a cell proliferant, meaning it regenerates cells. It's one of the highest, strongest cell proliferants.
Do you know make the tea from the leaves?
Yeah, well, the roots are the strongest parts. The leaves, you can also eat the leaves too. It's recommended for pregnant mothers because it will help make the baby. It will help develop the baby. You put it in a blender or make a tea out of it, but you put them in salads. You can cook them like spinach.
The roots. Is that
No,
what
the
you're-
leaves. We're
the
talking
leaves,
about the leaves,
okay.
but the roots.
Root part
Yeah,
is
you
the
would want to. You could use fresh roots in a tea, or you could store them by drying them in the sun. You would harvest them like late fall or early spring when the plant is either just coming up or just leaving, and then that's when all the power will be in the roots. And then you would slice them and dry them in the sun, and there's, you know, a process for that, but it will grow and keep growing, so you gotta like dig deep so it can't get, you know, underneath that fence or whatever.
Susan, do you know if there's any been studies about osteoporosis in bones and comfrey?
Oh, absolutely. I know a girl who had really bad bone loss, and she started taking this formula I have called the bone, flesh, and cartilage formula, which has some other herbs in it also, and just like 6 months, and she was being analyzed by I forget the woman's title, it was a doctor of some sort, and she had tested her blood, and she said she'd never seen that much bone re-density occur in that short a time. I have a quote from her how she described it, but she said it usually took years to get how she got, and she couldn't. Of course, the doctors can never understand that.
What
They're-
about like arthritis?
Well, it depends what's causing the arthritis. That's a whole nother area, but if it's just because of decay of cartilage, it would help regenerate. Cartilage, tendons, flesh, it's great for lungs, lung tissue, internal tissue, anything tissue, flesh, cartilage,
Or like
anything
an
that needs,
injury or whatever.
yeah. So it's known as the bone healer. All right, so that's the third one. So you wouldn't need to get, you know, stitches, sutures, anything, and there's no scarring too. It just it's magical. And I have lots of stories about it. Besides that kid with the there's another story where this person had a car accident, and the car was flung open, and the doors flung open, and this kid, he dragged his hand along the ground, and it removed all the fingers past this knuckle area. And they did the same thing. They put on this tea, you know, soaked it and soaked it, soaked it, and they ended up completely growing back, even the nails, all the way perfect with no scarring. And another situation where 2 different kids burned their hands playing with fire and kerosene, just melted their hands, both of them. And one set of parents said, well, we're going to heal this with herbs, and the other said, so, no way, we're going to the doctor. And the ones who went to the doctor, you know, they said, well, we're going to have to like take skin grafts from different areas. We're not sure how it's going to work, but, you know, you're probably going to need metal hands and the complete whole thing. And it was a very expensive process. And they were still just like, you know, okay, that's what we have to do. And the other one, said, no, we're going to use this, comfrey. And so and it's actually equal parts of wheat germ oil and honey mixed with comfrey leaves is the burn paste. And so they applied that, repeatedly. That child's hands grew back perfectly. Again, no scarring, nothing. Complete use of them, all flexibility. The other child, he ended up having the metal hands, and he never had the flexibility back, of course, and the skin never had all the scarring. I mean, because drugs just can't do. Herbs are healers. They can restore body function, whereas drugs only replace body function and actually make the body function less and less because they're replacing it. The body's like, well, you don't need me anymore, and it just stops, using that. All right, so that's comfrey, that's powerful, and we'll look for some of that, but it looks like this. I'll pass this around. It grows about 4 or 5 feet tall, and in Utah, especially, at places like out there, it's just out of control. All their herbs are giant. Whereas here in Florida, everything's kind of small, like with herbs. That I don't know why they're just gigantic in Utah. But
What's the burn form of equal parts of?
what was that? What is
Equal
equal
parts
part?
of-
Honey and wheat germ oil, and make sure it's raw. Raw's always better. Okay, so my fourth most important herb is plantain. How many people know plantain? That most people call it a weed, right? It's pretty proliferate in the northeast, probably other parts of the country, but there's 2 kinds of plantain. There's a broadleaf and a narrowleaf. It's, I don't know, I think everybody here, unless you've lived in Florida your whole life, but I've seen it in the Orlando area. But I'll pass that around too. It has like these stalks and then this little flower head at the top, and you'll see it.
The ones with the bananas.
You might remember it. It's, a tiny little plant. A weed, right? It grows like wherever. But plantain is very powerful too, because if you ever got bit by a poisonous insect or snake or something, you crush the plantain leaves and you apply it to the site of the entry. There has to be a hole broken in the skin. You can't just apply it onto with no hole. There has to be a hole. If you, for any reason, don't have a hole because it seals back up or something, and there's another thing you might need to do this for, you can create a hole by cutting a clove of garlic in half and putting that on your skin. Garlic is caustic and will make a hole, but it will be a natural, healthy hole. And that will heal back up. But you need an opening. And anyway, so then you would crush the plantain, you get the juices all crushed, and you just put that on. And there's been situations, again, lots of them, but let's just say somebody stepped on a rusty nail or something, and or for whatever reason, it was in this person's hand. And there's a red streak starting to go up their arm really rapidly because the infection was just spreading. So, this person again was like, what do I do? Called this herbalist. He was like, go look in your backyard, do you have any plantain out there? And he told him what it looked like. And that's what he did. He crushed it up, he put it at the site, and it just immediately started pulling that red stripe back down. And so bee stings, poisonous snakes, anything you need to draw something back out like that, plantain. Which is a weed, who's going to plant a weed, right? I don't know. Maybe you want to have corrals of these things. But you need, it's good to have in an emergency. And if you were in a normal place, I mean, not that Florida's not normal, but like where some of these things are more, they're more common, you wouldn't have to worry about it, you would have it. I was going to plant it here. We have some medicinal herbs I planted here, which we'll go look at in a little bit. But I don't know, that one, Indians say there's no such thing as a weed, so I should stop using that word. All right, the 5th most important herb for first aid would be chickweed. And chickweed is also edible. You can use that in salads, eat the leaves, but chickweed is one that has these little tiny leaves, and I'll show you that one. And you can use that to make anything that, like a skin rash, itchy skin, poison ivy, mosquito bites, whatever, make an ointment out of it, which I keep on hand all the time, and just put it on your skin. Or you can rub the leaves, take the leaves, just crush them, get the juice, and that will relieve any itchy skin rashes, stuff like that. And you can eat it, it's edible. So, and it's got teeny little leaves. It's a tiny little, whiny little teeny plant. But that's an important one, which everybody again calls it a weed. All right, the 6th most important, which I do have growing out here, we'll look at, is marshmallow. Marshmallow is where they did originally start trying to make marshmallow edible, not candy, but originally it's the roots. What they would do is the roots would swell up of the marshmallow plant, and it would be sweet or whatever. They did eat it, but now it's just pure sugar and garbage. But that's where it came from. And marshmallow, which is out there, like I said, and you can eat the leaves. If you ever were in an emergency and you had gangrene setting in, you could actually make a marshmallow tea, put the cayenne pepper in the tea, and soak the area, like, and again, you need an opening. You need to have a hole, create a hole if there isn't one. Let's say it's going up your leg. You put your foot in the tea. Within 24 to 48 hours, it would pull the gangrene out of your body. Instead of cutting your foot off, you know how many people are doing that, you know? Like, why don't they just soak their foot in some tea? But they don't know about it. They don't believe it. They're afraid. So they'd rather cut their foot off, I guess. But there's something else. Marshmallow tea, root tea, it's the root too. The root of the plant is where the power is. That actually for pregnant mothers is a great tea to drink. It increases the nutrient value of their mother's milk, and the marshmallow tea is something you could live on. It has all the nutrients you would need, just like say mother's milk. You could live on marshmallow tea. It has 268,000 units of vitamin A per pound of plant.
Say that again?
268,000 units of vitamin A per pound per plant. It's very high in vitamin A. So the cayenne, you mix the cayenne there because that's the great circulatory thing. And also cayenne is great for if you got frostbite too. You would drink it and it would bring circulation back to the area. You wouldn't want to soak something that had frostbite in the cayenne. It would be too fast. Like just thawing out meat, you know, kind of like be dead. But if you drank it, it would do it the right way. So for frostbite, that also works. The seventh most important herb is peppermint, which does easily grow around Florida. And peppermint is antiviral, antibacterial, and antifungal. It's very powerful immune stimulant. A lot of people don't realize that about peppermint, but it's also, if you had nausea, it's an anti-nausea herb as well. It could help your stomach settle. And it's an antiseptic, so everyone probably knows what peppermint looks like. And this one is the marshmallow, but we'll look at it live as well. And this is the ginkgo. Okay, peppermint. Anybody can grow that. Garlic, number 8. Garlic is the most powerful of all foods for killing viruses, bacteria, parasites, or fungus. Garlic is what they use to build the pyramids with for strength. It makes you strong, very strong in strength and immune system. The best way to eat garlic is fresh pressed. That's where the power is, in the fresh pressed juice. If you buy it already crushed and pressed, it's not there anymore because it starts to leave immediately in function. And the purple garlic is stronger than the white, and organic, of course, is stronger than non-organic. And you know, one of the best ways is to just put it fresh in your salad dressing, and that's, you know, anytime you have a recipe like even fish or anything you want to make with garlic, don't cook it. Add it, crush it, press it, and add it after. It has way more flavor, and you'll be getting all those properties. If you cook it, you're destroying all those properties. It lowers blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol. And if you can make it into a paste and put it, like mixing it with Vaseline, because it's caustic, like I said, it will burn your skin. If you mix it with Vaseline, like for babies, this is one of the uses. You could put it on the bottom of their feet, and it will pull out the whatever the infection is. That's if there's causing sickness. It will get within 90 seconds. You would smell it on your breath, because anything on the bottom of the feet gets absorbed in the body within 90 seconds. And the Vaseline helps to allow it to happen in a slower way, even though Vaseline, you know, it's allowed for whatever reason in herbal stuff. But so garlic is also, if you had a tooth infection, you can cut a clove of garlic in half and stick it between your teeth, and it would help the infection. You would burn your gums, but they would heal back, and you know, again, it'd be healthy healing. But garlic it will destroy parasites, fungus, viruses, bacteria. So that's a strong one to eat as a food. And if you are, concerned, if your body for whatever reason has that garlic odor for hours, that means you need to clean yourself out. That means there's not a way of the garlic is getting stuck in your body. It should be gone within a half an hour. It shouldn't be lasting for hours or days on your breath or your, body odor. That's a sign you need to clean out, detox. And everybody really should do that for maintenance anyway. You clean your house, you clean your car, you do all these other things, but if you ever give yourself an oil change, hose off all your insides, and you can't open yourself up and do that, you've got to use herbs to clean yourself out. Or juice, fresh vegetable juice. Okay, number 9 in importance is yellow onions. Yellow onions versus purple onions, because yellow onions, and this is something you would want to cook to get the properties out of them, but onions are the greatest antihistamines known. If you need to start thinning the mucus in your body because you're getting sick, you're getting a cold, whatever, yellow onion soup is one of the best ways to just start all that happening, thinning that out, running that out, and getting it out of your system as fast as possible. Even if you have a child, which I've done, and their nose, if you get stuffy noses all the time, sinus congestion, cut the yellow onions. Just the act of cutting that where your nose starts running, your eyes start tearing, that's activating your immune system. Those are lysozymes in the tears, which are activating your immune system. So with, like my son, when he was small, and he would get that, and if I didn't clear out his nose and get it running, then it would worsen and get into an infection, sinus infection. So he doesn't have that problem now, but every fall he would do that. I would see it coming. So I would have him say, "Come here, help me cut these onions," and put him between me and the cutting board, and until he was just running and running, just to clear it out. And it does work. But the yellow onion soup is how if you're starting to get run down, make yellow onion soup, and it has to be yellow onion, not the purple, like I said.
Do you cook it?
Yeah, and put it in the soup. You're kind of making a vegetable tea. When you put vegetables in soup, you're not losing any of the nutrients that are getting lost in the water because you're eating them in the water. So yellow onion soup with a potato, like any kind of potato you want, just don't remove the skins, because that's where all the nutrients are, is right underneath the skin layer. And that's a great basis. And then add whatever you want. Celery, garlic is what I do for the base. And then after it's cooked, this is just a whole nother recipe, but then I add a whole bunch of things raw, because raw is where all the enzymes are and where the life force is. So there's a few things that I cook in the soup, but then you add diced tomatoes, diced red onions, and you can add that on top, diced scallions raw, organic corn, organic peas I add into it, and then to give it the flavor, instead of any kind of vegetable broth, I just put like a tablespoon or a tablespoon and a half of raw olive oil. And olive oil is another one, by the way, you never want to cook. If you're cooking it, don't even bother buying the cold pressed virgin olive oil, because that's the whole reason to buy a virgin cold press, is because it's raw and it's the first pressing when they first crush the olives. And to get a second pressing of olive oil, what they do is they heat the olives, and then that's the second pressing, and that's why it's not cold pressed anymore. So if you're buying that thinking you're doing something healthy by cooking it using olive oil, you're just destroying all the and olive oil is a complete food. You could live on olive oil, raw olive oil. And there's another story to go with that, which is this one baby was born without part of his throat, so he couldn't swallow food. So, they were feeding him with an IV, and the doctor was like, "Well, we can't keep doing this forever." And the grandmother said, "Give him to me, I know what to do." And she took him home and just started putting olive oil on his skin, massaging olive oil like several times a day. And this was feeding the baby just through the skin with olive oil. And she did this for 18 years of his life. He lived on just olive oil through the skin. And at that time, they came up with the surgery to correct this thing in his voice. And they examined him, and he had perfect organs. Everything was, and then I said, probably from there is where he went downhill when he started eating all the food everybody else is eating. But he lived on olive oil for 18 years, massaging it. And that's actually part of a, they call it an incurable program. For any disease anybody says is incurable, part of the cure is 3 massages, 3 kinds. One is wheat germ oil, one is olive oil, and one is castor oil. And you kind of rotate those in addition to doing these cleansing herbs and juices. But part of it is the massages through the skin, because castor oil, we're kind of getting a little off here, but will break up any adhesions. If you had cysts or tumors or anything, liver congestion, you can use castor oil like as a fomentation, which means soaking a flannel cloth, cotton diaper, whatever you can buy them at Walmart. And you would soak it and just have it sit like if it was your liver, on the liver, cover it with saran wrap, do that overnight, and it will pull out, like if you had appendicitis, it will break up. Castor oil is very, very powerful. So anyway, massaging with castor oil will break up anything in the body, anywhere it is. The wheat germ oil, what that does is it gives the skin elasticity, adds vitamin E, makes everything flexible, nourishes that way. And what the olive oil does is it's a complete food, so it's feeding. But anyway, so onions, yellow onions. Another thing you could do with yellow onions is, like if you had lung congestion, if you were to bake them in the oven at 250 degrees for 20 to 30 minutes, whole, so that none of the juice is lost, just until they're slimy and as hot as you can stand it, but not too hot. You would apply them directly on the lungs, and this can happen for a baby too. People do this for babies, to break up lung congestions. It would just seep into the lungs and break up any congestion. You cover it with saran wrap again, but that's a case where you bake it. So the yellow onion seems to need the cooking to activate it. So that is powerful though. And try that when you have a cold or you're getting run down, is make that yellow onion soup until your nose is running. You'll be eating it and just running. And add cayenne pepper, anything hot like that, not Tabasco sauce.
So when you're cooking those onions, are you cooking them like a lot, or just
In the-
like
in
keeping
the
them
oven?
stiff? Well, either that
Baking?
or in the soup.
Well, in the soup, it only takes about, till they're soft, it only takes about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Until the potatoes are soft.
Can we use chicken broth?
Absolutely not.
No. Okay, just checking.
No. Yeah, everybody says chicken soup. No, it's this yellow onion soup is what you want to use when you're sick.
Just water.
Water, and then add the olive oil after, when it's raw, to the bowl of soup, and that will give the soup so much body and flavor. And then add sea salt, and I put fresh cilantro, fresh basil, fresh parsley. Just load it with all these raw things. It's got like a mountain of raw stuff, and it's got all these textures, really flavorful, delicious, with sea salt, fresh ground black pepper. Okay, number 10 is yarrow. Yarrow, a lot of people, it looks like Queen Anne's lace. It's got these white little flowers and it's lacy. Yarrow is great for when you have a fever or when you need to perspire. Yarrow will make the body sweat. And like most people, when they have a fever, they try to take an aspirin or Tylenol and squash that fever. And with babies, and it's one of the worst harmful things you can do. Because especially with a baby, they're trying to develop their immune system by reacting to any infection. The fever is your body's defense. Those are the good guys. That's your army. So if you kill off your army and you didn't do anything to stop whatever was causing the fever, the bacteria or the infection, you've just taken away all your defense. And then what people do is they take an antibiotic to kill the bacteria, but where do all those dead bodies go? They just sit in your body and accumulate, and that's what starts building up and creating toxic situations. And they equate that to, like, if New York City had a garbage strike and nobody came around and picked up the garbage, what would happen? What would be the first thing to move in on that garbage?
Rats.
Rats.
Big hairy rats.
Yes, rats. Rats, that's their job in nature. They're the decomposers, right? Their job is to come in and clean and eat that garbage. So depending on whatever you're eating and the toxins you're accumulating, that's those garbage things. So then the bacteria come in and try to clean that garbage out of your body. That's their job in nature. If you don't have garbage, they're not going to be interested in your body. They're not going to come in, which is actually also something important to know about the future. These germs and bugs that medicine can't touch that are antibiotic resistant, that's your best prevention, is just don't have anything they're interested in. And so, anyway, so then the bacteria come in there trying to eat that, and you get a fever because the fever actually rapidly multiplies those bacteria. That heat causes them to increase substantially, every degree in temperature, your immune system kicks up 10 times for every rise of 1 degree in temperature. So if you squash your temperature, you know, you're like with a baby, you know, they're trying to develop their immune system, you know, you're just not giving them anywhere to go. What an herbalist would do would be to try to increase the fever, not decrease it. And this is a real painful process, which I've tried to do, and it really only works if you have a fever. But what you're supposed to do, if you really want to knock things out and clean yourself and take advantage of that body's immune system kicking in like that, is you're supposed to take a hot bath, as hot as you can possibly stand it, adding hot mustard, cayenne pepper, and yarrow into the water. So you're sitting in a tea of the hottest herbs possible. And while you're sitting in that hot water, drinking a quart of hot yarrow tea every 45 minutes. Because when you have a fever, if you're trying to increase it, you want to keep it wet. Because a dry fever, a dry heat, would be like a desert, and it would destroy everything. Nothing grows in dry heat in the desert. But in a rainforest, which is hot and wet, there's more life there than anywhere in the world. So you want to keep it wet. That's why you're drinking the yarrow tea. You're in the hot yarrow bath with the hot mustard, which, to do that, you do have to coat your genitals with Vaseline, or you will be in pain. But then you're sitting in there, you're fainting, you're dying, you're ridiculously hot, sweating profusely in the tub, and it's activating your immune system, kicking it in, until you can hardly stand it. You need help to do this, by the way, because you will pass out. Then you have like a cold, wet wash rag that you can allow that on your forehead and the back of your neck while you're dying in the bathtub. But when you come out, you immediately step into a sheet that has been soaking in ice water, and somebody maybe will need to help you again, wrap you in this ice cold sheet, which will be the best relief you've ever had. It won't be something you won't want, it will be something you will be in very bad need of, and it immediately gets warm. So then the procedure is you take that and keep it sealed overnight. You would lay on like plastic sheets on your bed, seal yourself in, and put the garlic paste on the bottom of your feet, and just go to sleep like that. In the morning when you wake up, there should be all kinds of stains on the sheets, blue, purple, black, all the stuff they say going back from the time you were in your mother's womb will be coming out and pouring out of, like if you ever dyed your hair, that comes out through your hands and your feet, and there's people who have like wiped their hands on the walls when they've been doing serious cleansing where it's getting all that out. It doesn't come off, it can't be painted over, it's permanent. Same thing with the sheets, you can't wash it out. It's like the most permanent stuff. But then you would be so cleaned out, you would like sponge off your skin with apple cider vinegar, and then start drinking fresh juices. And from then on, if you didn't eat anything bad again, you're like almost pristine, pure. And this has saved people's lives that no medicine would touch. There was an army situation where a bunch of, back in the 40s I think it was, all these soldiers were dying from something medicine didn't have a cure for it. And this one guy knew about this, and he said, do you mind if I just try this on, 10 of your guys? And they were like, sure, we got nothing to lose, they're all dying anyway. Those were the only 10 that lived, the ones who had done this. And before you do it, just so you know, you're supposed to also do an enema and clean your intestines out with a garlic enema. So there's a little bit of a procedure prior to that, but that's what you do with the yarrow, though. The yarrow will cause this profuse sweating, and when you have a fever, increasing it will speed it up, and then all those bacteria will quickly eat everything, then they'll sweat right out of your pores, and that's why you're cleaned out. Whatever they wanted is gone, and they're gone.
So Susan, even without a fever, doing that whole process, is that something that you could use and do for complete detoxification without the fever?
And it doesn't work as well without a fever.
Okay.
Just like for curing asthma, one of the cures is when you're having an asthma attack. You have to do it when you're having an asthma attack, and that would be to take 3 teaspoons of lobelia tincture 10 minutes apart. Prior to that, you set yourself up by having a cup of peppermint tea, if you can get it down, I guess. And the lobelia, nobody ever gets past the 3rd teaspoon, and you have a bucket ready, but then you're going to start puking up a bucket's worth of mucus and phlegm out of your lungs, not out of your stomach. And from then on, that heals asthma, but you have to be having an asthma attack. if you're not having the fever, you won't heat up. You just won't. It won't heat up that way. And cancer cells are destroyed at 107 degrees, which is pretty much the most the body will ever heat up to. Again, the body won't cure itself to death. As long as you're keeping the fever wet. You can't just do that with a dry fever. You have to keep the fever wet. Okay, so actually I did include one other important one that I'm going to talk about here, and then we'll go out in the field, which is chaparral. Chaparral is another one that has survived whatever killed the dinosaurs. It's been around that long, and the herbs and the plants that survived the dinosaurs are really important because they say we're going into another cycle of whatever killed the dinosaurs is going to happen again. So that's why I study these things. Chaparral is a cancer remedy, and it's a specific for arthritis. It's a very, very powerful blood purifier. And it's really good for radioactive fallout again. So you got ginkgo and you got chaparral, which both survived the dinosaurs, and they're both good for radioactive fallout. So that should be a clue, right? Maybe there was some radioactive fallout then, I don't know. And you can also use chaparral by taking a tablespoon of it in a quart of boiled distilled water and making a spray. And you can spray, actually, for that one recipe, a tablespoon of chaparral in a quart of boiled distilled water, let it sit for 20 minutes, then strain out the leaves, so you're kind of making a tea, let it sit for 20 minutes. You can use that as a mouthwash, and it will reduce cavities by 75%. Chaparral. It also is great for making a spray where you make the tea, you simmer it down till it's only a quarter of the volume of the original liquid, and then you put it in a spray bottle, and it will get rid of the worst odors like sweat, body odor, beer smells, smelly feet, like in a bar or something. It's a great, it's the strongest antioxidant power of any herb known, chaparral. So, okay, and that one looks like sage kind of. It's like a desert brush. All right, so now we'll go do some really interesting stuff, which is walking around, and I want to show you some weeds that are in the field that we try to pull and pull and pull, but I'll tell you what they can do if you didn't do that, if you needed them, and they were your friend. It doesn't work. I try to tell people to stick close together, but you'll get it. Yeah. I planted some herbs that I had just to see what would grow. Blue vervain is going to go here, St. John's wort, but here's one of the herbs that would be your friend. Does anybody know what this is?
Oh man, that grows all over.
I pulled that up with weeds all over.
Yeah, right? So what is it?
Weeds.
Let me just try something.
Is it mint?
Oh, there's a ladybug. She's our friend. We're going to talk about this one too. This is pigweed. And I was testing the leaves because supposedly the young leaves taste better and are more tender. But pigweed, let me go to that page. It also, we'll see it a lot bigger than that, like right there. There's some bigger pigweed. Right next to that, that's a mustard green. These are mustard greens, but see that pigweed there? Now let me tell you about, first of all, pigweed gets its name from, there's two theories on this, but they're both related to pigs. It's supposed to be pig's favorite food. I kind of wanted Brian to hear this stuff. And this is on his land, but anyway, it's considered a wild beet or wild spinach in the wild beet, wild spinach family. And if you have seen this, I mean, I haven't seen it in my yard at home. Does everybody have that? See that over there? Has everybody seen that in their yard?
What are you pointing at, Susan? I'm sorry.
This right here, which is a baby one, but it's all over. As we walk down, there's a big one right there, but it's right here.
Are we following you down the aisles? Or?
Yeah, I guess. Here it is again. And we found that actually caterpillars prefer that. They'll eat that over the things you're valuing first because they value it too. And it turns out pigweed is really rich in vitamins and minerals. It is an edible plant. If you had to survive, we're talking about pigweed, Brian.
Yeah, good stuff. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
pigweed, it says it's pig's favorite food.
Yeah.
So we should be collecting it and feeding it to the pigs. But it's really rich in vitamins and minerals. A 100-gram portion has 6,100 units of vitamin A, 80 milligrams of vitamin C, and a lot of B vitamins in the pigweed. It's the tender tops and the young leaves that they say are the best to eat, and put them in a salad or a soup is what they say. Because the older leaves start to get bitter and tough.
You talking about this junk right here?
Yes. Try it.
You can eat this?
Yes.
Have a just ate it.
If we were in a situation where you didn't have food, look for pigweed. This is what the Indians used to eat.
Yeah.
Indians ate a lot of pigweed. The
about this
flower
part?
tops, it never talks about the flower. The seeds can be ground into a dark flour and used for cereal, breads, waffles, pancakes. Especially if a lot of these recipes with seeds, which we're going to be talking about, they say kind of mix half and half with regular flour. Grind up the seeds, dry them out, and mix it. It's very high in calcium, which they say for anyone who needs a bone-making source of calcium, not calcium supplements, which are harmful, and that's a totally different subject, but eat it in the plant form, and that plant is very rich in calcium. They say even the seeds raw you can eat are very nourishing raw, and they say one plant can have as much as 75,000 seeds. That's why it grows everywhere. One plant can have 75,000 seeds. They say it's one of the richest sources of calcium among leafy green vegetables. Any of these other ones, pigweed probably has more calcium. And here's a recipe for you. 4 cups, I don't know if you want it. I'm not saying you have to write this down, but just so you get an idea how to flavor it. This was in one book. 4 cups of green leaves, 1 onion, a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, some sea salt and pepper. Simmer them together, and they say it makes a delicious meal. Or eat it raw. Anything you eat raw, you're going to get more nutrient value in. So if you can, blend it with your salad, lettuce mix is what they're saying. Mix it in and try that. The leaves also are medicinal. They can be used to stop bleeding as an astringent for dysentery or diarrhea, for ulcers, intestinal bleeding, and to reduce swelling. The Indians simmered the leaves for arthritis pain and swelling and for profuse menstruation. That weed there. And not only does the calcium help the teeth, but the fluid extracted from the boiled leaves, if you hold it in the mouth while it's hot or very warm, will help with toothache pain. Pigweed, okay? But if nothing else, we should be, they say it's pig's favorite food.
Think of all of them we hoed out of them beans there.
And over there, the sunflower. All over. And it comes up and it comes up and it comes up. So if you had to eat something and you didn't have food, remember that. The Indians ate it all the time, and it's medicinal.
Well, there's another kind over here where you go into the chicken that does not have the same.
Oh, and the hairiness of it, which some plants like the turnip greens, are those hairy? They will dissolve when you cook it. You won't have that problem. Another plant which is really important, I don't see any, you might have had it back at the house. Did you ever have cattails back there?
Well, we got them in the ditch everywhere.
They're over there.
Where?
They're right there. Well, they're right in that ditch over there.
Oh, well, let's
cattail
go
right
walk over
there.
to them so we can be looking at it. Cattails.
Here, somebody give me a hand there so I don't pull myself in. I gotta get down further though.
All right. Muskrats like
Hang on,
to
going
feed
down
on.
in further here. I gotta go down lower. Somebody hold the guy who's
Yeah, I know. Get that stick bike here ready.
Somebody grab onto the hood. And these things are tougher than you think.
All right. Well, let me tell you which parts they say, and maybe we can start with that.
Look out.
Maybe you should wait until I get to the parts.
Hang on, I'll get you one here.
Okay, great. Great. Wow. Look at all this cat tail. All right, let's already back up a little so we can have like a semicircle.
Okay.
Okay, now cattails is what's considered like the most versatile plant the Indians valued more than anything. Because not only could you eat it, which we'll talk about how, But the leaves are valued for matting or thatching, making chairs, making shelter. And what you would want to do is, when you get the leaves out, you want them to dry in the sun for a little. They will spring, and then you get them wet, so they'll be pliable. And then you can like weave a chair with it or anything you want, and they'll have already been pre-shrunk. And as most people probably know, you can, when they do have the heads or the punk part, you can soak that in kerosene or tallow and light it, and it will keep insects away.
You can form an angry mob.
Yes. So the pollen of cattail, which forms on the head of the mature pollen, whatever that is was considered very sacred by the Indians. It's very high in protein, probably similar to like a bee pollen type thing. And it's like a very bright yellow that you could use it in stews or to make bread or as a flour for pancakes. They ate it as a cereal. And what you would do is you would take when you saw the head with all this yellow pollen on top, just shake it off into a bag or onto a blanket or something like that. It was how they collected it. And the other parts, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to collect the pollen, but they would gather the cattail roots, and they're supposed to be little pearly white cone-shaped corms, is what they call them, growing along its length. So let's look for that. There's also supposed to be these spaghetti things, so I don't think that, these things maybe. Okay, so let's just talk about that. They're supposed to be delicious, raw, refreshing, and filling was how it was described.
Well, it's just
They would not take all of them, but allowed enough left so the root could be planted back in the ground and regrow. But these are called CORMS, forms. And they say, cattail has many delicious edible parts. It is not an acquired taste, as many of the wild edible plants, and will please even the most finicky. No matter what time of the year, there is always something edible and very nutritious on cattail. It is one plant that survivalists can depend on no matter what the situation. In the spring, so where are we? We're in winter. In the spring is when you gather the young succulent shoots, which can be pulled from the rootstock and mud without digging. Do you think these are young shoots?
no.
Because we're like in hot temperature?
Well,
if
I don't
they
see
were-
any cattail heads that are old and dried out, so.
No, I'm talking about the young shoots, which would be,
There's some young ones
Right
right
there.
there.
yeah, it says, you
That's some
peel
young
the
ones.
shoots to reveal their tender white core, and they can be in raw or cooked like a vegetable or just lightly steamed. You gather them until they're over a little like the first 1.5 feet of the peeled young stems, which give it its name Cossack asparagus.
Oh, they're talking about this. It's just like a cabbage
Yeah,
pod.
it's the central core of the new young leaves from the base. Some people say up to the first 4 or 5 inches, or some people say the first 1.5 feet. And it's cooked and eaten as a staple food in Russia. That's where it's got its name from, Cossack asparagus. They eat it all the time. And it says to eat, pull the inside leaves until they break loose, then nibble from the bottom up until it is no longer tender. Steam it, add butter, soy sauce, a pinch of wild ginger. That's how one guy makes his.
Oh yeah.
That's
Well, I
it
see what
good?
they're talking about.
Does it taste good?
Well, you got there's not much there. It's kind of like cabbage, just like swamp.
The heart, or like heart of palm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, it's all right.
Okay, what does it taste like?
Chicken.
Everything.
It's supposed to taste like maybe cucumber or nutty celery.
It's not bad. It doesn't have much flavor to it at all, actually.
Boy.
But yeah, I see what they're saying. You get rid of that
Give
outer
me some
husk
more.
and it's soft.
Cut off some pieces.
Yeah, y'all jump
piece
down
like-
there and get you something.
What about that root part? You can eat that root part?
Oh yeah, so those
corns,
other
yeah.
parts.
We're pretty tough
Yeah,
today.
let's get off of that. Well, we'll
We're
talk
not
about
gonna
these.
get much out of it here. It's
These
certain
little
terms
nub
of leaves
units
here.
are the
Pretty
thing,
Yeah,
right?
these
That's
things
what you
here.
want.
Right, that's what they say. Eat those raw, and they're supposed to be delicious and refreshing.
Give some to
Also-
this lady right here. She's dying for those.
Look at all these here, you know.
Jeez, take them home.
But
Have a party.
when it starts forming the flower stalk though, and it's in the greenish yellow stage, it's called wild corn, and that can be removed from their sheath. It has a sheath cut like slices, maybe.
Let's slice it. Yeah. Cut a hump.
That can be eaten like corn on the cob. You could either like corn on the
Oh, yeah,
cob.
that's
You
the
could
good stuff there.
eat raw. I mean, that tastes
Yeah,
delicious
it is.
raw.
Oh,
yeah.
Sure, now everybody uses me for the guinea pig. Oh yeah, let's try some.
I get it.
It gets. We might have to get another one. It gets. Does anybody want to get another one? Aaron? No. It gets more bitter as it
Yeah,
goes
it
up.
gets tough as you go up.
So some people say the first 4 or 5 inches are the best, but some people say up to the first 1.5 foot. But when it has that greenish yellow flower stalk,
Somebody.
you would want to feel.
What about that one over there, Brian?
I'm gonna get my wife.
And just feel for that bump that it's
You
in
wouldn't eat
there.
boots? I
And
got
then,
some black boots in the car.
And that's all wild corn,
No,
and that's
really, they're
supposed to
men.
be
They're big
delicious.
boots.
Yeah, I know.
Eat that as wild corn.
Boy, he's gonna go swimming in there.
Well, I'm not. That's my
Or
good
eat
shirt
it
too.
raw. Some people
But they're-
boil
Glad you wore
it
your
The little
and
guys?
add
Yeah.
cheese on it.
Even the big ones, it's, you just keep peeling down till you
The
get to
husk
the
off the
middle.
corn.
You know. Here, I'll
Just
sling
keep
them.
that
That's
in mind.
it.
It's like this was a main staple of Indians' diet. And then if you left that on the cattail and you didn't eat that young corn, that's when it turns into the pollen on the top. So you wouldn't want to eat all of them because that pollen
There you
is
go,
very,
Ed.
very valuable.
Go start peeling them like husking corn.
Okay, and the pollen can be gathered, it says, in early summer.
Fertilizers and
Either quickly rubbed or shaken into pails or onto a cloth, then laid to dry in the
Everything's
sun.
going this way.
And then you can mix it with half and half regular
Yeah,
flour
but
to
you
make
wouldn't go the other way.
pancakes or anything. It could be used as a thickener for soup, or you can store it for the winter. It's very rich in protein.
Oh yeah, well I'm not
You
sure.
can simmer it in water for 30 minutes and eat it like a hot cereal, the pollen on the cattail, until it becomes thick like oatmeal. Just remember this, you're surviving out somewhere. It's great to add to pancakes or scrambled eggs, blah, blah, blah. And if you make 5 parts of pollen with 1 part of honey, it's supposed to be a great, quick, high-energy food.
I mean to clean this
5
bitch out
parts
anyways.
to 1, pollen and honey. Another recipe, here's a guy, he put a half a cup of low-fat Bisquick, 1 cup buckwheat flour, a half a cup of cattail pollen, a handful of chopped almonds, 3 tablespoons of flax seeds. He added cooked wild rice and cooked whole grain cereal.
I kind of got to like it. No.
And anyway, he mixed with a half a lemon and some egg whites, makes waffles out of them, and he says it's the most sustaining, high-fiber, energy-rich, protein-rich breakfast you'll ever have. That's this one guy that uses that pollen. In the late summer, it says, we're in late summer, aren't we? No. What are we? I don't know what we are. The small horn-shaped cones, which are the new shoots or rhizomes, it says when they're about 3 to 4 inches long. Okay, so these are still small. They begin to form on the rootstock and remain until the following spring. So they start in late summer and they remain